All right, we're ready to begin.
Good afternoon. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's forum. While our audience is gathering, we'll be completing our tech setup, so we will begin in a couple of minutes.
Okay, we can begin. Thank you.
Well, welcome to the forum for candidates running for alderman of wards 1 and 3 in Evanston. This forum is sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Evanston and the Evanston Public Library. My name is Mary Kelly, and I'm Vice President of the League, the Evanston League. The League of Women Voters is a national nonpartisan political organization dedicated to promoting the active and informed participation of citizens in government. The League takes positions on issues, but neither endorses nor opposes candidates for public office. This forum is being recorded and will be available on demand on YouTube with links to the video on our League website. In addition to questions from League members and community partners, the public was invited to submit questions for this forum. The deadline for questions was 48 hours prior to the event. The League has reviewed the questions for appropriateness for the office to ensure that questions are directed to all candidates and to eliminate duplication. All candidates for wards 1 and 3 were invited to participate in this forum. The candidates with us today for Ward 1 are Judy Fisk and Claire Kelly. The candidates for Ward 3 are Nicholas Korzanowski and Melissa Wynn. The moderator for today's forum is Josie Yanguis. She is a resident of the Little Village community in Chicago, a member of the League of Women Voters of Chicago, and a member of that league's education committee. She has helped to organize 2 Aldermanic candidate forums in Chicago in cooperation with other community organizations. Okay, Josie, it's all yours.
Thanks so much, Mary, and good morning, candidates. I'm going to give a quick summary of the rules, just to familiarize everybody with this. All statements and responses by candidates will be timed. Everyone should be able to see a box that says timer on it, and eventually it'll become a countdown box to remind people of how much time is left for candidates to speak. Candidates will have up to 90 seconds for all statements and responses. I, as moderator, will be enforcing these time limits and may interrupt candidates to enforce these time limits, as these have been agreed as part of the ground rules and format for today. For opening statements, I will be calling upon candidates in alphabetical order, beginning first with Ward 1 candidates and then Ward 3 candidates. When we start with specific questions, I'll be alternating back and forth as to who will be responding to questions. And about halfway through, I'm going to switch from as far as which ward order will go first. And then finally, for closing statements, I'll be calling upon candidates in reverse order of opening statements. And finally, no visual aids are allowed. So we're going to begin with opening statements. Again, candidates, you will have 90 seconds. And for opening statements, please include your qualifications for this aldermanic position. And we will begin with Ward 1 candidate Fisk.
Well, thank you very much, Josie, and thank you to the League for holding this. The League obviously has great experience, and I've been very pleased to have participated in past years. The city is facing several existential crises at the same time, unfortunately. Our tax revenues have been depleted by the impact of COVID, and our staff has been reduced to the bare minimum. And our downtown, which was already in need of revitalization and smart development, has also been negatively affected by the pandemic. The lakefront, our most precious natural resource, is eroding from climate change and other factors. And behind the scenes, a group of rogue politicians is pledging to restructure the city's government in ways that I believe have the potential to forever change the Evanston we know and love. I'm running for re-election because I'm confident I have both the experience and character to effectively tackle all of these significant civic issues while continuing to provide the high level of service that my first ward constituents have learned they can rely upon. And so as the candidates answer your questions today, I urge you to listen for the answers that provide the information based on facts and experience, as well as clear explanations of what's needed in terms of funding and strategies to solve these problems. And if you are a first ward voter, please remember that I'm here for you and that my actions as alderman are always focused on serving you and all of our first ward neighbors.
Thank you very much. Next for Ward 1, candidate Kelly, opening statement.
Hi, it's great to be with everybody today. Thank you to the League of Women Voters. My name is Claire Kelly, and I'm a teacher, an advocate, and a lifelong First Ward resident, and I'm running to represent my neighbors here in the First Ward. And here's why. We need to change the trajectory of our city. We've seen our downtown and small businesses devastated during COVID. I've watched the profile of our city change. I've seen the diversity that we all care so much about undermined and harmed by continually escalating high property taxes and the unaffordability of living here. And I also deeply understand that our budget, the way that we spend our residents' tax dollars, is the ultimate blueprint of our city's priorities. And for too many years now, decisions, policy, practices, and expenditures have not reflected Evanston's stated goals of equity, of affordable housing, of stabilizing city finances. For too many years, our budget has not reflected the needs and interests of our residents. And up until this year, our property taxes have increased on average of well over 5% at a rate nearly 4 times the rate of the Social Security cost of living. I care deeply about Evanston and Evanstonians, and this is unsustainable and unnecessary and must change. And here's why I'm qualified to move our city forward on a path that better responds to the needs and interests of our residents. I have successfully impacted positive change in Evanston in the past while teaching and raising children, from getting an ordinance passed banning medical waste incineration to including state legislation.
Thanks.
Last sentence.
Thank you. All right. Let's move on to Ward 3, candidate Korzanowski, opening statement.
Sure. Hey, everybody, and thank you to the League for putting this together. Thank you for everybody that's involved in participating today. My name is Nick Korzanowski. I'm running for 3rd Ward. Been in the area for about a decade. I've got 2 young kiddos. My oldest just started over at Lincoln. He's in the special needs class, so it's a small format, but he's back in person now. I professionally, I work as a network engineer, helping run the tech department in a Skokie K-8 school district. So I'm living COVID on both sides of the equation right now. I've been involved in town. Well, first to the school issue. I ran for school board 4 years ago. I got the endorsement of DAC at that time. If you remember me from back then, the work continues. I've been on the board for the Evanston chapter of Indivisible, the Southeast Evanston Association. And I'm a founding member of a non-for-profit called Dine After Dark, which seeks to augment and amplify inclusive food service practices, specifically around staying open during Ramadan hours. I'm running in the third to try and tackle 3 big issues. Obviously, there are more than that, but 3 big ticket items is tackling our affordability crisis in town, our budget crisis, and our climate crisis. And underpinning all of that, as a tech guy, I'm also trying to implement a municipal broadband, which is city-owned internet that will compete with RCN and Comcast and the likes of that, so that we can provide services to revitalize small business, help those in affordable housing qualifying for reparations, and make access.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And opening statement for Ward 3, candidate Nguyen.
Yes, thank you. I want to thank the League again for holding these forums, and I deeply appreciate the activities of the League in Evanston. I think you are our invisible watchdog on our city government, and I deeply appreciate that. I want to introduce myself to those who don't know me. I come from a long line of public servants. My dad spent his career in the United States Navy. My mother was a military spouse. My grandfather was a police officer and ultimately a police chief. Before moving to Chicago, I attended Duke University. I know that's not always popular, and then worked in Washington, D.C., first for Common Cause, and then for a Democratic congressman on Capitol Hill. I went to Northwestern Law School, and after I graduated, I specialized in environmental law, and I continued my public service work by doing pro bono legal work at the Howard Area Legal Center, which is less than a mile from the borders of the 3rd Ward. And there I provided legal services for families facing eviction, divorce, spousal abuse, and benefits denial. Public service is a passion for me, and it's been a great honor to serve on the City Council over the last years. I thought long and hard last summer about whether to run again. Finally, I decided that it was the right thing to do because of the incredible crisis that Evanston was facing due to COVID. Right now, I believe our city needs experienced, seasoned leadership. I would be honored to contribute to that leadership going forward.
Thank you so much, candidate Nguyen. Thank you. Thank you. All right, we're going to start with the first question, and the first question will be directed to Ward 1 candidate Kelly. In light of the shooting that took place yesterday in Evanston, what short and long-term actions would you support to prevent this kind of violence in the future? Candidate Kelly, 90 seconds.
Okay. Yeah, these recent killings are absolutely devastating. My heart goes out to those family members. You know, why we still don't know the details exactly of what happened around this particular incident, but we do know something. We do know that just 2 years ago, this current city council oversaw and implemented budget cuts to our youth outreach worker program. They approved the elimination of several youth outreach workers. And this tragedy, this recent horrific tragedy, underscores the need to reinstate and build a youth development plan that establishes a viable safety net for our youth. We need a strong youth outreach program and team that is visible around town, made up of Evanston residents ideally, and that is proactively working with all the organizations that have a youth focus, such as the Youth Job Center, the Moran Center, the YMCA, and others. We need a substantive program that engages with our at-risk youth systematically and strategically. We need to reinstate and build a robust youth development program and plan that includes these strategic outreach campaigns in our community immediately. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Same question, Ward 1 candidate Fisk.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, obviously, it's always a tragedy when incidents like this occur, and fortunately, we don't see them that often in Evanston. But we're, the community that we are, we're all devastated and affected by them. I do think that our youth outreach program, working with its partners, is doing a good job, and I am also proud of our police force for the work that they do as leaders in community policing and getting out into the community, engaging with the community, engaging with those partners again, and with the rest of the city staff and the aldermen to make the contacts within the community that are needed to hopefully anticipate problems that can easily escalate into violence. One of the things that I'm very happy about is that we have instituted a pilot program that is designed to be a response to 911 calls that do not require a police presence, but can offer some counseling or other therapeutic services to people who are in need before an incident escalates. So unfortunately, these things happen. We'll look at every opportunity to stop them, but I do think that we have good people in place who are aware and working hard on the streets to make sure that these incidents are kept to a minimum.
Thank you so much, Kate. Our next candidate to answer this question from Ward 3 will be candidate Wynn.
Yes, thank you very much. I think everyone in Evanston, without question, is chilled by what happened yesterday. Every single time one of these things happens, obviously the immediate community is traumatized again, and we need to stop this. But it ripples throughout our community. Families, many families are affected by every single one of these events, not just the immediate perpetrators and victims, but also anyone who was a witness or had a connection. So I think that we are all grieving in Evanston for our community. We do need to continue the work that we have done with our Youth and Young Adult Division for 11 years. I have been a strong supporter of that program from its beginning, when it was originally sponsored by Alderman Lionel Jean-Baptiste. It was designed to put outreach workers on the street, and they're there to intervene, to provide some kind of stopgap or a safety valve for incidents or our youth that are in crisis or in need. We need to continue to fund this strongly. We need to continue this outreach work. We also need to work on reducing guns in our community and developing workforce development programs so that we are providing the social supports and access to a positive future for our youth in Evanston. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Same question, Ward 3, candidate Korzanowski.
Thank you. I want to touch first on this notion of the youth outreach program. That's something that was diminished in the past years, and staff has exited that program that could have and do tremendous work for exactly the communities that are affected by this. I want to backstop what Claire has been saying about increasing funding to that, increasing support to that in any way that we can, all hands on deck. That's exactly the sort of social outreach work that we need to be doing. And sadly, we're seeing the effects of diminishing that work in our everyday life. Something that hasn't been mentioned yet in this answer, this isn't just, I jotted down here, Alderman Fisk said, these things happen. Well, there was a lockdown for District 65 during this. These things don't happen. Families don't expect to just get an email that says, by the way, there's a soft lockdown, because what we were told as parents was not descriptive. It was your kiddo is in a soft lockdown right now because there's a shooting. That doesn't just happen. And the notion, well, there's an alternate program. Yeah, it's underfunded in the current budget. So yes, we need to be finding all of these resources to allocate to this, because it's not just a thing that goes on in our community. This deeply impacts every single one of us, and we need to treat it like the crisis that it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, the next question will be for candidate Fisk in Ward 1. How should City Council evaluate the appropriate level and type of services provided by the police department? How and where will this impact the police budget? Candidate Fisk.
Okay, I'm sorry. Could you just repeat the first part of the question again?
Absolutely. How should City Council evaluate the appropriate level and type of services provided by the police department? How and where will this impact the police budget?
Okay, so I serve on the Human Services Committee, and as part of our responsibility on that committee, we review the police services. And I have been interested in the discussion that's been going on for the past year about police defunding after the George Floyd tragedy, which has really changed the world and for the better. I think these were discussions that were long overdue, and they have certainly changed our discussion at Human Services. So the police in Evanston, as I mentioned, and started to mention in my last comment, have been doing community policing for a number of years. We were the leader in community policing in the nation. We were the leader in putting police on the street. We were the leader in saying we're a community that has higher standards for our police department. We're a community that expects our police department to be part of the community and to be always in contact with the community. That's not always happened, but it's happened rarely, so that I think it is working well. And that would be what I would emphasize to everyone, that when you think about defunding the police, for example, we're roughly 20 officers, 15 to 20 officers short right now. And that has a great impact on police response within the community, and especially when we need to go to outside police response for some unique situations.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Same question, candidate Kelly from Ward 1.
So I think it's imperative that we look at the numbers, that we look at the statistics, and though we have we have excellent police force, we are nevertheless in our city outspending other communities per capita tremendously. And we're not finding that this is having a correlating effect on the rate of crime, on the rate of violent arrests involving violence or anything else. So the amount that we're spending per capita on our police services, even with some cuts or positions that are being held right now, even despite all this, we are still outspending all surrounding communities. We are still overstaffed, outspending, and we're not getting the bang for our buck. We are not in fact seeing a correlating impact by the amount that we are spending. So this absolutely needs to be assessed, fully assessed, and we should be looking absolutely at programs like Cahoots in Denver and other cities where they are saving the residents money by restructuring and allocating a greater amount of fund towards social services. There they are seeing a reduction in taxpayer expense as well as a better outcome in terms of crime. So this is absolutely what we need to do, is look at these other cities about restructuring in terms of allocating money towards social services and really examining currently what we are spending per capita to fully understand that this is in fact not serving us the way it should.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Same question, Ward 3, candidate Korzanowski.
Sure. So first of all, I just want to speak to the conversation as it's ongoing, since I'm responding in the middle of it, that we shouldn't be taking our approach to a police budget only or exclusively to police response. That's by definition after the fact. We're seeing how ineffective that is right now, if that's the only outlook we take. So I'm a very strong proponent for funding things like social work, alternative response, those sorts of things. In terms of evaluating a budget to look at that, anybody that saw the last city council meeting, I popped in for a brief moment about that. As a tech guy, I have a unique data-driven perspective that I can assess to things like a budget. I do that in my professional life anyhow. I had mentioned in the police budget an item that could have saved some dollar amount of money. And it's not punitive. It's not meant to hurt somebody. It's meant to just find savings, because as Claire's just spoke to, the budget is very large and it doesn't necessarily exist without places where we can trim some funding to put towards social work without hurting somebody's bottom line or without necessarily coming down on anybody. We just need to find a financial way to backstop programs that we know work to reduce crime and public safety concerns here in the community. Social outreach, public service, and social work are ways that we can directly do that within the confines of the budget that we're talking about.
Thank you very much. Same question, Ward 3, candidate Nguyen.
Well, this is a really important question, and it's something that the city has been studying and undertaking changes for some time. I think first, as I said, the Youth and Young Adult Division has been in place for 11 years. And I do want to differ with the two other candidates. We have never reduced the funding on the Youth and Young Adult Division in a single budget over the 11 years. Some of the personnel may have changed, but we have never reduced the funding. And I think that not a single member of the City Council has ever suggested that we would, and we have always supported it. And that program has worked. It hasn't been perfect, obviously, but it has done that, provided the type of social outreach and provided the social supports that exactly is needed, the intervention long before the police are ever called. And what we are doing with the alternative to the 911 program is evaluating our 911 calls. And the committee has already been studying the CAHOOTS program in Oregon for the last 6 or 8 months. They're looking at other programs as well. And we have allocated $200,000 from our city police budget to this alternatives to 911 program. What's happened over the last 40 years, as we all know, is the social supports and services that have been provided traditionally by government have essentially eroded away. And what's left is calling the police. We need to put those social services back in place to support people before the police are ever thought about to call. And that is something that we support very strongly on the council.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right. Next question will be directed first to Katie Kelly in Ward 1. In order to balance the Evanston city budget, please explain what program or staff cuts you would support and explain why. Candidate Kelly. You're muted, Candidate Kelly.
Apologies, sorry about that. Yeah, so the budget, really, fiscal accountability is the focus of my run here for alderman. And we have, and I'm going to use the term, we've squandered tens of millions of dollars in the last 4 years on expenditures that actually have had no benefit to residents. So that needs to stop immediately. We need a strong steward who is going with a detail-oriented eye that will scrutinize the budget. We have to stop being spoon-fed, the information from from upper management. We should be getting monthly financial reports. When was the last time that City Council was presented with a monthly financial report? But furthermore, we also need to end the hidden reserves. So for example, the fleet service has an additional $700,000 over in the black this year that isn't accounted for. That is not making a line item. That should have been returned to the general fund. That's more than the amount that our taxes was raised this year. Our taxes were raised for less than that. But in fact, this was, and I also want to talk about Northwestern and my plans to have Northwestern contribute more, which I am positive that if I am elected, I will collaborate with my colleagues and with Northwestern to ensure that Northwestern contributes more to the city through a pilot, a payment in lieu of tax program, or through other programs. All of this will help us to balance the budget. No more tax hikes. We need to draw the line. We need to stop.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right, same question, Ward 1, Candidate Fisk.
Yes, thank you. Well, I don't think Ms. Kelly understands the budget, and I don't think she understands the need to raise revenue in Evanston. Our budget is pretty much a bare bones budget. We've cut our staff to the minimum. We did a great job actually last year when we were facing, because of the pandemic, an $8 million shortfall. We reduced that to a bare minimum of a property tax hike. Unfortunately, that was necessary, but under the circumstances with the loss of sales tax and other revenue, that was something that needed to be done. The idea of revenue generation is something that I have been interested in and actively pursuing for the past 12 years that I've been on the council. And I believe that we can do that. We have a lot of developers who are interested in coming into our town and relocating their businesses here. That would be great. In order to make our downtown work well, we have to have feet on the street. The idea, and I'll just touch on this briefly, I know 90 seconds isn't very much. But the idea of going to Northwestern and that somehow Ms. Kelly would solve that problem and bring money into the city coffers, it's been tried before, been tried by aldermen for a long time, has not worked, and would have devastating impacts on the neighborhood that she seeks to represent.
Thank you very much. Same question for Ward 3 candidate Nguyen.
Well, yes, thank you very much. Last year's budget was probably the most difficult budget that we have ever had in the city since I have served. We just passed the anniversary of the pandemic, and I can tell you that we had monthly budget updates from our city manager and our financial staff every single month last year, telling us what we were facing. The first budget update that we received in April was chilling. It predicted a $20 million deficit. And our city staff got to work. Through furloughs, layoffs, renegotiations with our police and fire unions, and a lot of hard work on our city staff, we managed to reduce that deficit to $8 million. This during the worst pandemic we've had in 100 years. Ultimately, we do have a bare bones budget. So I would not look to cut any more in our city budget. What I believe is that with the new federal recovery program that was just signed into law by President Biden, our budget will look better this year. If the vaccines are in our arms by July, our economy will begin to come back. We will have federal aid. But I also believe that we must continue to be efficient in how we run the city. We've learned a lot during COVID. What can we streamline? What better measures can we employ to provide a more efficient government spending less money? We have to use this time wisely.
Thank you so much, candidate Nguyen. Thank you. Ward 3, candidate Korzanowski. Same question.
Sure. So I want to be very clear here. This notion that, well, hey, the whole city council has been informed monthly about our budget situation. Half of that council in that information session voted against the tax hike. That was a 5-4 vote. If either of the candidates that are in this forum right now that sit on the council had voted the other way, there wouldn't have been a tax hike. So the notion that this was inevitable, it was necessary, there was just no other way, half the council disagrees with that. The notion that, oh, well, we saved everybody from this massive deficit. We're so fiscally responsible. How did you get such a massive deficit in the first place? The Northwestern just ran a surplus in a pandemic. I've never heard somebody say, look, I only lost $8 million and say that's a great budgetary feather in our cap. Of course, there are places we can cut our budget. Of course, there are things we can ask from folks that have not been asked in the past for things. Northwestern, and I mean, this notion we can't ask Northwestern, Alderman Nguyen, Alderman Fisk, your friend Ann Rainey said we should ask Northwestern. She said that they owe us over $600,000 for the fire services, and we raised taxes to cover $500,000. Northwestern owed bills more than the tax hike. Your own colleague said so. This isn't some pie in the sky notion that progressives are coming back with. This is actual budgetary policy decision-making that is not settled, that is not just a done deal and not open for debate. There are genuine disagreements here. We don't have to be disagreeable about them, but this notion that there's no other way is just not true.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, the next question will be directed to Ward 1 candidate Fisk. The first stage of the proposed reparations program focuses on support for housing. Please explain your views on whether or not this is the appropriate first step. Candidate Fisk.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, I support the reparations program, and my thanks and appreciation go out to Alderman Ruth Simmons for not only bringing this to our attention, but for her tireless work on it, along with our city staff who has done the research and provided the guidance going forward. As you know, Evanston is the first community in the nation to do this. We're feeling our way along as we go. And appropriately enough, when you look at the harm that has been caused to the Black community over the years is directly related to housing, redlining, and other housing measures that put them at a disadvantage. So it's appropriate that reparations focus on making housing more affordable, more accessible, and trying to solve those historic problems that we have been responsible for. So I think that's a good start. I think we need to trust that our committee is going forward. There's going to be a vote at the city council a week from Monday about the program, which I fully expect to support. And I am extraordinarily proud that we have not only started this program, gotten this far, and that we will be moving ahead with more ideas for it in the future.
Thank you very much. Same question, Ward 1 candidate Kelly.
Thank you for that question. Yes, I agree. Reparations, I've always believed very deeply and in reparations at the local, state, and national level. So it is very exciting that we believe in reparations in our city and that we want to move forward with reparations. But because reparations are so desperately needed across this state and across this nation, it's of extreme importance that we get this right, or we get it mostly right. We cannot, the people of this country, our African-American residents of this country, we cannot afford to screw this one up. We got to get it right. And I think to get it right, we absolutely need broad participation of the Black residents of Evanston. Everybody needs to know that it is an accessible program to weigh in on, because if that fails, if this doesn't go right, what kind of an example are we going to set to encourage and motivate other communities to want to follow our lead? So I feel it is of absolute necessity that there is an outreach program, that it is accessible, that the residents in Evanston feel that they have a voice and that they do in fact have a vote in voice in how this goes forward, not only for Evanston, but for the nation. Thank you very much.
Ward 3 candidate Korzanowski, same question.
Sure. So I want to start by just drawing a fine line between a housing program and a reparations program. Both are good programs, but to conflate the two is problematic, and we hear that from our own community right now. The notion that reparations is the same thing as 15 folks getting $25,000 on their mortgage. No, those are very much very different things. One is a housing program that can be part of larger reparations work, but that larger work is what I want to focus on. When I talk about municipal broadband, for example, I have advocated for making the home monthly internet service charge a $0 amount if you qualify for reparations. In a pandemic, if you've got young kids, that access that's educational equity access as well as it is just having broadband in the home. If you're working from home, hey, there's some help putting food on your table as well. We can align, what I'm trying to say is we can align our larger policy aims alongside reparations work and help generate the outcomes that we want without necessarily buttoning up some more money to reparations funds. Obviously, that's work that we ought to be augmenting, amplifying, and doing in any way we can, but we can also align projects and policies that aren't necessarily part of that work to help generate the outcomes that we need. One more thing before my time runs out, in lieu of credit increases from Northwestern are also a very good way to help with that housing aspect of things. And I'll abide the time limit then.
Thank you very much. Same question, Ward 3 candidate Wynn.
Well, yes, thank you very much. I am very strongly in support of our reparations programs and the work that has been undertaken. I serve on the Equity and Empowerment Commission. I am I serve in the Aldermanic seat on that commission with former Alderman Dolores Holmes and Jane Grover and a number of other members of the community in terms of coming up with how the city will approach equity. And during that time, reparations has come forward, led by Alderman Rue Simmons. And I salute her for all of this work. We are the first ones. And so, yes, we should get it right, but we also have to recognize that that there are many aspects of reparations. When we say the word reparations, every single one of us probably has a different definition of that. That's one of the challenges of this work. What is reparations? And it is so all-encompassing that it will take years for us to truly reach some type of true reparations. But we have to make a start. And the city's reparations ordinance was particularly discussed the housing harms that had been done by the city of Evanston to the Black residents of Evanston. And so because of that, legally, we need to make sure that our program is tailored to address the documented harms that we have. We have great documentation on the harms in housing to our Black residents. And so to withstand a legal challenge, we must have a program that is tailored to meet those
Thank
harms.
you very much, Candidate Nguyen. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next question will be directed to Candidate Kelly in Ward 1. Do you support or object to allowing multifamily buildings of 4 units or less in currently single-family only zones, and why? Where in your ward could such multifamily buildings be situated? Candidate Kelly. Oh, you're on mute.
In the background at home. Apologies. Yeah, that's a great question, especially for this ward. I feel very strongly that strong neighborhoods make strong cities. And particularly in the first ward, we really can do a much better job, I believe, in protecting the integrity of our neighborhoods. I believe the current leadership and practices and policies have been largely ineffective in protecting the cohesion and the integrity and even the aesthetics of our neighborhoods and the downtown area. So what we're finding is that many landlords, mostly who live outside of Evanston, have been allowed almost with near impunity to pack homes to over occupancy rates, trashing surrounding grounds and failing to maintain properties. And I know firsthand, I just want to speak to this for a moment. My son, who recently graduated from Northwestern, lived in one of these family homes and that was turned into frat houses in both cases. And when I went over there, I was shocked to see that the lawn wasn't cut, the screens were torn, trash hadn't been picked up. And I called the landlord right away and I said, you need to get over here and clean this up. I was shocked. They were shocked that I was the mother who lived nearby and not in New York City. And they got on immediately. I took lots of photos because I wanted to follow up with it. And when I inquired as to whether, or not anybody ever got involved from the city, they said they'd never been contacted by anybody. So I just want to say that I think right now what we have needs to be, we need to have our codes enforced, and we really need to monitor it. And clearly whatever's been happening has been failing.
Thank you very much, Candidate Kelly. All right, same question for Ward 1, Candidate Fisk.
You're going to have to repeat the question because I think
we'll be happy to.
Discombobulated.
Do you support or object to allowing multifamily buildings of 4 units or less in currently single-family only zones, and why? Where in your ward could such multifamily buildings be situated?
Okay, so in the first ward, we have a wide variety of housing types. The far north end and the far south end of the first ward are zoned R1 for single family. But within walking distance of those areas are a lot of multifamily, and of course downtown is a dense multifamily area. I recently worked with residents in our ward on both the 700 block of Lincoln, the 1900 block of Orrington, and along Sherman Avenue between Emerson and Noyes to address housing code violations in those areas. That had been reported and brought to our attention, not only by my own observation, but also through the work of the neighbors. We got the city to not only cite these property owners, but inspect and cite the property owners, and they will be going to court. There is agreements that have been put in place of how they must comply, and I'm happy to say that that is something that I have done. In terms of the zoning itself and R1 zoning, I absolutely think that it's essential for us to not undo our zoning ordinance, but to instead make sure that and I'm assuming that the question is one of affordability, that we have affordable options within our R1 zones, like accessory dwelling units and efficiency houses.
Thank you very much. Same question for Candidate Nguyen in Ward 3.
Yes, thank you. Much like other parts of Evanston, but in particular, the third ward has a wide variety of zoning and a lot of mixture of multifamily along with single family throughout the ward. I'm actually looking kitty corner from my house at a multifamily a condo building that was a long-time rental that was probably built about the same time that my house was in 1920. So one of the great aspects of living in the third ward is the variety of housing that we do have. But affordability is a critical point for everyone here in Evanston. Housing prices have went up while wages stagnated during the Great Recession, and that has caused this affordability crunch here in Evanston. And the City Council has been working on ways to make making changes in our zoning ordinance and also ways to provide more affordable housing here in Evanston so that we don't lose the wide spectrum of affordability that we once had. I supported the accessory dwelling units change to our ordinance. Many pieces of property here in the third ward have the potential to have accessory dwelling units, which provide affordable housing as well as allowing the property owner to stay in their homes. I also supported efficiency houses, and I have a plan for Lot 1, an unused city parking lot, to provide family size affordable housing on that location.
Thank you very much. Same question, Ward 3, candidate Korzanowski.
Thank you. So to the notion of 4 units or less in what's already or what's presently zoned for single family, if the solution to the question was simply more density is always better, then we would see our population change when we have so many high density units going up all over town. It doesn't. We saw a lot in the mayoral primary, this conversation, where the population doesn't actually fluctuate all that much, even when we bring in more density. So to me, the issue is not about how many units are in the zoning space, but how affordable are they? How are we able to actually put folks in these units and help them come up and thrive, or keep the home that they already have and not get run out of town from whatever financial cost there might be? So to me, I very much see this as an affordability question. Lot 1 is a big example in the ward of that. And I think Alderman Nguyen has actually been very good about saying, hey, there's a limit to that density. There's a limit to how we want to actually provide this lot to the community in a way that does prioritize multi bedroom units, so whole families can move in. And then obviously it's in a great location to come up and thrive. Those sorts of things are actually first and foremost on my mind when I'm looking at housing. Affordability is something I passionately care about. And I believe that if we address that, then the larger concern to your question is actually something we're doing tangible work towards achieving.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All right. I'm now going to switch the order of wards, and we're going to start with the third ward. And we will start with candidate Korzanowski on this next question. So Evanston uses the council/city manager form of government, but the state allows other types. What form do you think is more appropriate for Evanston, and what are your reasons?
So I think this is a question that's come up during this election a couple of times. And I think there's a genuine knee-jerk, well, maybe not, maybe that's even inappropriate to say, but there is a genuine sentiment that, hey, maybe we should reevaluate the very structure of the way we do business in our government. And when that question comes to me, my immediate ask back is like, why are you having that conversation? Why are you having that concern and that question? And what seems to come up each and every time is in a city manager situation. If there's not the confidence of the city manager position by the community, then the whole structure looks suspect. And that's very understandable, especially given the process that went around hiring the current city manager. I think we should address that process. I don't think the entire structure of government needs to be completely burned down because one process needs fixing. And it certainly does need fixing. It was a genuine scandal how we came to the hiring of our current city manager. And I want to be very clear, I'm not talking about a human being here. I'm talking about the process that appointed that station. We should be offering a full public transparent process to such things. We should not be then saying, by the way, whatever we decide needs a supermajority to undo. We should have such a position with the full-throated confidence of our community. And if that is in place, the structure doesn't seem so problematic, I think, because the city manager really does have such a sacred role in this format to our citizenry.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Same question, Ward 3 candidate Nguyen.
I'm sorry, would you repeat it, please?
I'd be happy to. Evanston uses the council/city manager form of government, but the state allows other types. What form do you think is more appropriate for Evanston, and what are your reasons?
Thank you. I am a very, very strong advocate for the city council, city manager form of government for a number of reasons. First, actually, it was the League of Women Voters here in the city of Evanston who led the charge 70 years ago for the city of Evanston to become a city manager form of government, and for very good reasons. A city our size of 75,000 has 800 employees, $350 million budget. What that does allows us to do is to hire a professional to run our government, which is significant, and which is then guided by the elected officials. I think that provides us with a city manager who has professional training and experience to manage what is a pretty large budget with a fairly large number of employees. That allows a city our size to get the highest quality city workers and city employees to give us the best advice and their expertise. Now, that's all guided by the city council, who are the policymakers. I believe that this is the best form of government for a city our size, because when we compare and look at cities approximately our size that have a strong mayor form of government, they are Berwyn, Cicero. Those are cities that I don't want to be like. I think that we have good government that's transparent, that provides the best services we can to our community through professionals. And I'm a strong advocate for the city council, city manager.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Candidate Fisk, Ward 1, same question.
Yes, I too am a strong proponent of the council manager form of government. And again, it was the League who was responsible for bringing this to the attention of the city in the 1950s. And that was in response to a strong mayor form of government, which I think the League at that time, according to my research, was really concerned that we keep big money politics out of our Evanston city government and that we remain, at least on the face of things, nonpartisan. As far as the city manager herself is concerned, I very much support having a professional manager managing the day-to-day operations of the city. That is what that person does. And that's why the council looked very closely at qualifications, length of service, and other qualities that in our minds made the choice of the city manager the correct choice. The other concern that I have with the proponents of changing to a strong mayor are they've been talking about eliminating home rule, for example. And that would dramatically change the way we do business in Evanston because the home rule status gives us the power to perform a lot of the functions of government rather than leaving those decisions to the state legislature in Springfield. And I don't know anyone in Evanston who would like to be told what to do by Springfield rather than by
Thank you very much. Ward 1 candidate Kelly, same question.
Thank you. Well, first, I just want to touch on the home rule comment. I haven't heard really any candidate advocate for doing away with home rule. Home rule is great if you have a responsible government. And that's the key piece here. And that's what we need to understand. That's why some communities have gotten rid of their home rule because their taxes were skyrocketing and it was the only way to get it under control. So home rule is great. It comes with many, many benefits that I would protect. But that's why we need a responsible government to ensure that our taxes, if we'd had home rule, we wouldn't have had the skyrocketing tax increases, 13% in 2019 increase. That was horrific when we're one of the top tax burden cities in the nation. So no, home rule is wonderful, again, if you have a responsible government, and we need a responsible government, a transparent government immediately in this next election. Hopefully we will see this turnaround so that we can really, benefit from our home rule and stop the continual rise of taxes. With regard to the mayor, your question about the mayor versus strong city manager, I don't really have a firm position on this. I'm willing to look at, I think we have to look beyond Illinois. Again, we should always be looking to other cities and what is most successful, but I can't say that I don't have a firm position regarding which is better.
Thank you very much. All right. Next question will be directed to candidate Wynn in Ward 3. What actions should Evanston take to advance climate action, and how should they be financed? How should the city work with other organizations? Candidate Wynn.
Well, thank you. Climate action is one of our top priorities here in Evanston. We here on the shores of Lake Michigan have been witnessing climate action and its impact, climate change and its impact really very directly. And over the years, Evanston has been in the forefront of sustainability and climate action, taking climate actions. And I've supported all of that all along. I support the latest adoption of CARP, Climate Action Resiliency Plan, and the two main goals, some of the two main goals of that over the next few years are waste reduction, which is really reducing the amount of waste that is generated by every single person here in Evanston, and then also weatherization and conservation of energy. So those two things, I think we need to do. We need to educate our residents even more about the value of this and why it's critically important, not just to our lives, but to the entire climate. One of the things that has been so successful for Evanston during COVID is our ability to communicate with our residents. I hear over and over again from people about how happy they are with the level of information they receive from the city regarding COVID. I want us to use that mechanism as part of an educational process so that we can educate everyone in Evanston about these two critical goals, the first two critical goals of CARP, reusing and reducing our waste.
Thank you very much.
Weatherization. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Same question, Ward 3, candidate Korzanowski.
Sure. So to just start where Alderman Wynn left off there with CARP, I want to touch on a couple of other points to it. I believe, and if I'm inaccurate on the number, it's not by much. I believe something like 44% of our emissions right now are coming from aging buildings. So I have been an advocate for finding ways, be it an incentive or a stipend or something, to help modernize HVAC units in old buildings. HVAC, for those that might not know, is high voltage air and conditioning. Basically, the weatherization kind of concept comes in here, right? Like keeping your house at a certain temperature, regardless of the climate, is a very large footprint sort of thing that we can address. Beyond that, the notion that waste reduction and weatherization are obviously very important portions of CARP, but I've also talked about sort of backstopping lakefront. There's shoreline erosion that is deemed like the actual word they use is catastrophic. And so I've talked about actually like physically backstopping these areas so that we can, without having, so many plates in the air at one time that we're going to lose something important like that, so that we can focus our efforts on LED lighting, on upgraded HVAC, on things like what everybody's talking about in CARP, right? This is something we need to accelerate our work on, and I have advocated trying to accomplish that work a little bit earlier than we're planning as well, because there will be a next step after this. We just need to—
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All right, same question, Ward 1, candidate Kelly.
Can you repeat the question?
Absolutely. What actions should Evanston take to advance climate action, and how should they be financed? How should the city work with other organizations?
Thank you. As many know, I care deeply about the climate, and I'm very proud that even up till today, we are still benefiting from a movement that I spearheaded to shut down the Northwestern Evanston Hospital medical waste incinerator. which led again to air quality improvement across the nation, all because of Evanston and our efforts. So I'm very proud of that. Again, that was one of the medical waste incineration is one of the biggest contributors to dioxins in our fish in the lake, so as well as some heavy metals. So I'm very committed to the CARP plan. I think I think part of the issue right now is figuring out the implementation component. That has not been figured out. We know where we want to be and when, but we need to roll up our sleeves. And I've been doing that all throughout this campaign. I've met for many, many, many hours with people from the Citizens CGE, as well as the Environmental Board, as well as with others, including Daniel Biss. And I think we must right away figure out what we need and work backwards on our budget so that we can, again, this is a priority of our city. We need to look at our budget and work backwards to figure out how we can implement this. But more equally important is the climate justice or the environmental justice piece, how we are going to effectively reach out to our communities of color and our low income community so that these communities are fully involved and that we fully understand the concerns and needs from these communities. And I will advocate that we in fact.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Candidate Bisk, Ward 1.
Yes, thank you. Well, as you know, the City Council spearheaded the adoption of both the Climate Action Plan and the Resiliency Plan. I wanted to make the point that in terms of talking about revenues, I want to make sure that we have the revenue necessary to offset the costs to for compliance, not only to our small business owners, but also those members of the community who cannot afford to take the steps to comply. I've encouraged that developers and builders strive for LEED Platinum, and I'm especially interested in natural habitat and obviously the lakefront. So most recently, I worked with the City Council, didn't give up, but when it looked like we were going to have to defund full vaccination of the trees, I worked with our City Council to bring that back to Council for a revote, reached out to Natural Habitat Evanston and then to Citizens Greener Evanston, who worked with me on a privately funded program that would bring money in so that we, in fact, are inoculating all the trees this year. So that's great. So the other thing I want to say is that we have a bike program in Evanston, and we have dedicated bike lanes along Sheridan Road. That was not the original plan. I worked with Northwestern students to make sure that our dedicated bike lanes went down Chicago Avenue into the Northwestern campus, where there are over 5,000 bike rides a day.
Thank you very much. All right, candidates, this is going to be the last question before closing statements. And we'll begin with candidate Korzanowski, Ward 3. Here's the question. What are the most important elements in relations between Northwestern and Evanston? Should changes be made? And if so, what changes?
So this is obviously a very large topic that has a lot of passions going in very different directions, but I'm going to sort of start by couching this in the way that our mayor-elect has tried to couch this, which is leadership is changing both at the city level and at the university level right now, and there is a genuine opportunity for both sides to put their best foot forward as good neighbors with each other. And I think that's an admirable aspiration that I think we really should work in good faith towards. There's no reason why there needs to be an adversarial relationship, even though some folks are advocating for that. The ask from Northwestern to the city should be something that can go both ways. The city should be able to ask of Northwestern and not feel that there's some added concern there that wouldn't have come in the other direction. Right now, I do feel like maybe that's not the case, that Northwestern will make an ask that the city would never make an equivalent ask of. So long-winded way of trying to say that if we have a good faith relationship going forward into these conversations, then we don't necessarily have to have some sort of a punitive outcome on either side of the equation. It's back to being disagreeable or just simply disagreeing. To that end, I do feel, fire services, Northwestern could have prevented a tax hike by paying their bills. Things like that, I don't think we necessarily have to be mean about, but firm. Hey, pay your bills. Everybody's hurting if you don't. So I don't think these are controversial conversations to be having so long as we agree that we're having them as good neighbors and not as punitive
Thank you very
financial
much.
interests.
Thank you very much. Ward 3 candidate Nguyen.
Thank you very much. I think ever since I moved to Evanston, this has been a topic on everyone's list, and with many, many attempts to try and improve things. I think over the years, actually, the last time there was a leadership change with a new mayor and a new president at Northwestern, there was an improvement. And so I hope that over the next year, when there is a new president at Northwestern, that the ball will move forward on that front, along with our new mayor, Daniel Biss. I do think that the tough part of this is that Northwestern's tax exempt status is written in the Illinois Constitution, and that provides them with a lot of legal protection for our trying to get them to pay taxes. So we have to find other alternatives. We have begun to do that. I think we need to continue to talk with them about this. And I have always explained to Northwestern administrators that they need to see the value of a healthy, economically strong, vibrant Evanston to them. I mean, neither of us is going anywhere, and we both offer tremendous assets to each other that we need to take more advantage of. But I believe that Northwestern also needs to understand our budget and where we are now in different ways. And we should continue to advocate and work together to build more trust and more cooperation. But we do need more cooperation from them.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Same question, Ward 1 candidate Fisk.
Yes, thanks very much. So I chair the NU City Committee, and that is a committee that was established by the consent decree to settle the lawsuit Northwestern filed over the Northeast Evanston Historic District. I've never seen my opponent at one of those meetings, but they are very valuable, and I suggest that that everyone could join them. I absolutely agree that Northwestern should be paying for fire services, but I also have to raise the issue that Alderman Nguyen mentioned about the Illinois Constitution. So if Northwestern ever pays anything that resembles property taxes or are called property taxes, they risk losing that exemption under the Illinois Constitution. And that is not something that they're ever going to do, even though previous councils have tried to do that. So we need to look for another source of funding. I have several suggestions that I've passed along to city staff to investigate, including being reimbursed by the state of Illinois for the loss of the property taxes that their charter has given to Northwestern. But I also think that we have a uniquely good relationship right now with Northwestern. I know that, again, my approach to them is firm but fair. Comes out of the military, firm but fair. I am representing the interests of the city of Evanston in my ward in all of my meetings with them, and I fully expect them to represent the interests of the university, and we can respect each other on that. We also have a very good—
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All right, candidate Kelly from Ward 1.
So along with fiscal accountability, having Northwestern contribute more is at the forefront of my campaign. And I just want to say right off the bat that I have probably the deepest roots and connection to Northwestern, probably than anybody in this town. My great-great-grandfather was in the first graduating class of 5 in 1859 and wrote the first commencement speech on the philosophy of civil liberties before he went on to work in Abraham Lincoln's law office. So my youngest son graduated recently. I did some of my graduate work there. So I want to get that out first. This isn't against Northwestern, but I know absolutely if I'm elected, we will begin a pilot task force to establish pilot guidelines. And that means payment in lieu of taxes. Universities and towns across this nation that have private tax exempt universities are doing this to wonderfully. Boston is an example. I've been meeting with commissioners of assessments from many different cities who've been walking me through how you establish this partnership with your tax exempt private university. The city of Boston started in 2011, and every single year they've been increasing the amount that they are able to get for their city from their tax exempt private institutions to the tune now of close to 40 million. There's absolutely no reason. Also, our city could establish, we do have home rule. We could have a fire protection plan. If we had a fire protection agreement with Northwestern, we wouldn't be having this discussion right now. So I think there's a lot that we can do. I know we can do in partnership with Resolve, but our city council has been, let's face it, they've been lacking the resolve.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right. We're now at this time for our closing statements, and we'll begin in reverse order from opening statements. So we'll be beginning with Ward 3, candidate win, closing statements, 90 seconds.
Thank you very much. Thank you again to the League for holding this forum. I very much appreciate it. This is a critical time for Evanston, as we have all been discussing. We will have a new mayor, Daniel Biss. We will have at least 3 new aldermen on the council. And even though we all have some vaccines available to us, we are still really in the throes of COVID. And many of our fellow residents are still struggling mightily with housing insecurity and food insecurity. And we are also facing a direct challenge to our form of government by some of those who are running for office. These are really critical times, times that we have not faced, I think, ever in our city's history. And in the face of this, I believe that we need a city council that includes strong, seasoned veteran leaders. We need a city council that has people who have been through some of these crises before, that have a deep knowledge of policy and know the solutions and possibilities that can address these serious issues that are facing us. I believe I have the skill set, and I believe I stand ready to serve again. And working together, I know that we can solve these problems. We have worked together on COVID to make our city one of the safest cities in the United States. We can recover and we can rebuild better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Closing statement, Ward 3, candidate Korzanowski.
Thank you, and thank you again to everybody that's watching, that helped put this together, that's hosting it, and to the candidates as well that attended. This was a very, I think, productive conversation to be having. So thank you all for that. Once more, my name is Nick Korzanowski. I'm running for 3rd Ward City Council. I feel that right now is a time where everybody is sort of, in the whole country, is sort of pushing the reset button, so to speak. And the notion of build back better isn't something that is monopolized by our new president or something like that. We can, as a community, take a positive, proactive, in some cases, an affirmative step towards a genuinely brighter future together. I believe that future is progressive, and I believe that my voice is one that is uniquely qualified to help in that cause. Again, I am a data-driven guy. I'm a technology guy by trade. I feel that that is a perspective that can be uniquely beneficial in this moment in our time. And I feel that we have a lot of issues that, frankly, are not the sudden urgency that COVID provides, but issues that have been structural and systemic for a very long time here in the city. And I think it's about time we finally take a look at the entirety of what we want to address in our city and go about making that change here in a way that we don't normally have afforded to us with this coming election. So I look forward to your support. I hope I do earn it. Early vote on the 22nd of this month, regular vote on April 6th, nickfor3.com if you'd like to learn more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Closing statement, candidate Kelly, Ward 1.
Okay, thank you. So now more than ever, we are in desperate need of a strong steward of our city's budget and our city's policies. And especially in the 1st Ward, our downtown has been devastated. But I'm not the only one that thinks this. I want to mention some of my endorsements. The Democratic Party of Evanston has endorsed me, along with Representative Robin Gable, Commissioner Cam Davis, Opal, the Evanston firefighters. We don't want to see the firefighters, their pension or the firehouses made a political football anymore because of expenses that should never have happened because of expenditures. Along with Citizens for a Better Government, Evanston Fight for Black Lives. All of these organizations stand behind me because they've seen me in the past, they've seen me work, and they believe that I'm going to move forward with the changes that are so desperately needed to better serve our residents of Evanston. I've already begun the work. I'm very excited. I've already begun the work. Like I said, I've been meeting with commissioners across the nation of assessment to figure out how we can best partner with Northwestern. I'm excited to start this work and to start making these improvements for Evanston. I hope you'll vote for me. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Closing statements, candidate Fisk from Ward 1.
Yes, thank you. And thank you again to the League for holding this forum. I am concerned that some candidates have filed lawsuits against the city, have filed complaints against elected officials, are hiding their arrest record that's already been a point of contention in this election. So I want to just ask everyone to take a moment and think about who it is that you are electing as First Ward Alderman. As a former realtor and small business owner, I understand what's necessary to attract and maintain downtown businesses while promoting smart development. And I shepherded the rebuilding of Fountain Square that took 6 years to get that done using TIF dollars, no tax cost to the taxpayers, to make it a centerpiece for our downtown, a gathering space that's already been implemented and is working hopefully this year beautifully. I'm devoted to the preservation of the lakefront, but this is a time we need to be working together calmly and civilly to solve the actual problems, not shouting at council meetings or bullying people at ward meetings. That's what we've experienced in the past from the person running against me. So my constituents know me, they know I listen before I make decisions. They know I have the temperament to work collegially with city staff, and that I have a deep knowledge of zoning and other details that allow me to make informed decisions. I hope you'll vote for me on April 6th.
Thank you very much. And that's a great reminder to voters of Evanston from the League that, again, early voting begins on March 22nd and the elections are on April 6th. The League's gratitude to the candidates for speaking this afternoon and to the Evanston Public Library for sponsoring this event. Have a great afternoon. Have a great weekend. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Take care, folks.